Hey guys, it's Adam from Loose Pixel, and welcome back. Very recently, I had a conversation with one of my students during one of our private sessions. And when we first got on the call together, she looked very worn out. She looked really tired. She looked like she'd had a rough week. And I asked her, "How are you doing?" And she said, "It's been a week from hell." And she went on to talk about just had been a really rough week. Her husband was in Iraq. She was deployed in Iraq, and she was really stressed out and worried about him. Her time was very limited. Her energy was very limited. Her sleep was really suffering as a result of this. A not all too uncommon situation, but you could tell she'd been kind of dragged through the dirt a little bit that week. And the conversation evolved to where we started to talk about some of our favorite, and I repeat, favorite artists online. Artists we really love watching, that are very inspiring, that produce gorgeous work, that are incredibly helpful and generous to the community, and always put their best foot forward and their best energy forward. But regardless of that they were unintentionally and indirectly sometimes a bit discouraging. And I repeat, these are artists that we love. These are artists that we watch regularly, that inspire us every single day. But they could still give off an impression to you as the listener that was a bit discouraging and a bit upsetting. And that discouragement came from how incredibly hyper-productive these artists are, and how they talk about crushing it every day. They talk about their 16-hour work days. They talk about their 7 days a week of work. They talk about their endless artistic production and their need to go all the time. And would giggle and laugh about, yeah, I know that's probably a little unhealthy, but I'm such a workaholic. Ha ha ha, right? And they're not being disingenuous. They're not being dishonest, nor are they trying to advocate for an unhealthy lifestyle. But when you juxtapose their incredible level of productivity next to your own, which might not be anywhere near that, where you might only be able to put maybe a couple of hours a day into your work, if any, where you don't have the energy every day, you don't have the motivation to be able to get up and crush it every single day, that you start to feel down on yourself that you don't have what it takes to succeed. You don't have what it takes to be that great, recognized, reputable professional that you really wish to be. And I would argue that the gross majority of us who do watch this content probably feel that way. That you watch these artists who are pumping out painting after painting after painting, that they're going to worldwide events and cons, and they're producing content online and YouTube videos, and their Instagrams are they get 600 million likes on their Instagram and their Facebook, and their life is just kicking off professionally. And you're sitting there thinking to yourself, how the hell am I ever going to keep up with that kind of competition? And that's where the discouragement comes in. And again, they're not trying to discourage you. They're not trying to show off. They're not flexing. They're just doing what they do, and they're sharing their passion in a very legitimate way. But there's something that has not been mentioned. There's something that isn't spoken about. There's a reality going on here that kind of goes unnoticed, or at least undiscussed. And that's what I want to discuss today. And it's in no which way, shape, or form a slight on any of these artists. They achieve their success through endless work. They achieve their success through incredible effort. They achieve their success through blood, sweat, and tears, just like you. But there's something they don't have. They might not have the same obligations. They might not be working under the same conditions. And if you take your life into account, if you take what you are doing when you're not creating artwork, when you're not creating content, when you're not going to events and Comic-Cons and art exhibits and stuff like that. It's what you're doing on your other time that might not match up with these uber successful, uber active artists. And there are a multitude of different factors that can play into it. Maybe you have 3 kids at home. Guilty, right? Maybe you have young kids. Maybe you have new children. Maybe you have a newborn who's still in diapers or is still breastfeeding, and they're crying overnight, all night to because they want to eat, because babies sleep short hours and nurse frequently. Maybe you've got kids in and out of school. Maybe you've got kids at home who've got the flu, or maybe you've got to drive children back and forth from school. Maybe you have to make dinners and lunches. Maybe you have to do homework with them. That's one factor. Maybe you have a very, very high stress full-time job, or maybe you have multiple jobs. Maybe you don't have access to resources in your location. Maybe you're living in a country, very common with many of my students, living in a country where they don't have access to endless artistic educational resources. Thank God for online learning, right? Maybe they don't have access to professional jobs. Maybe they don't have access to professionals that can provide them with that kind of feedback. That is changing, but that doesn't change the reality of your immediate environment. Maybe you're living with a disability. Maybe you're living with an emotional or physical or psychological disability. I've had many students like that too, that aren't only trying to overcome the challenges of learning, but they're trying to do so when they're dealing with pretty heavy-duty emotional stresses or psychological stresses. When I look at people like that, when I look at students who are full-time stay-at-home moms or dads, when I look at people who are working full-time jobs or even part-time jobs, when I look at people that are dealing with emotional or physical disabilities, and they still manage to pull any work off, let alone an abundance of it, that is a monumental achievement. I know for a fact, if you've been watching my channel over the holidays, I produced a ton of content. I spent half of my Christmas holiday, my winter holidays, setting up new equipment and studying lenses and cameras, and I upgraded my camera equipment and my set design and audio and all of these different types of things, and I produced multiple videos, and I had to edit them and render them and publish them online and schedule different things and plan different pieces of artwork. I did a ton of work. You know why? Because I had the house to myself for half a week. I rarely have the house to myself for a week. I wake up in the morning, I drop my kids off at school, I come back home, I get a little bit of painting done for these videos, and then an hour later I start my morning class, I teach my morning class, I have a quick lunch, I meditate for 15 minutes, I get back to work, I paint, edit, film, record dialogue just like I'm doing right now, and then my afternoon class starts, and I do that until 4 o'clock, and then 3:30 my kids come bursting in through the doors. Daddy. I tell them to be quiet because I'm still teaching my class. And the moment that's done, the moment my kids know that I'm not busy with anything and that I'm finished my class, they immediately say, Daddy, can I do this? Daddy, watch this. Daddy, you know this happened, and Lucas is doing this, and Chloe, and and can you? And then I have to cook dinner, and then I have to wash dishes, and then I have laundry to do, and then I have a little bit of recording time maybe after that when they're busy. If it's noisy in the house, maybe I'll just record video instead of doing audio, because who wants to listen to audio with kids playing and having fun in the background? It's fun, but a little bit distracting. So I have to find that private time to be able to schedule my day, to be able to produce what I produce. Once in a while, I might want to play a game, although I don't do that as often now because I'm having too much fun producing content for you guys. But when I had the house to myself for almost a week, I had an entire day to do nothing but make myself a meal and produce content all day long. I painted more than I'd painted in a long time. I rendered and I published more stuff than I'd ever published. I was I was crushing it. I was uber productive. But that's because I could. That's because I simply had the time and I simply had the energy. I wasn't investing that energy anywhere else. And you have to take that into account when you're living your life and you're trying to be productive on your own and you're trying to stay competitive in a world like this where there's people who do spend 16, 18 hours a day producing work. So don't be so darn hard on yourself. If you can invest an hour or maybe 2 a day as an average into your work, into producing artwork, into practicing, into creating, that's more than enough for growth. It might not be the astronomical growth that somebody who invests 16 hours into it is, but you've got other stuff you've got to take care of too. And are you willing and capable of sacrificing all those other responsibilities of yours for the sake of producing art? Well, to most responsible people out there, the answer is no, of course not. So it's all about balance. Now, there's other factors that go into this. There's other facets of this reality that I want to tap onto. And one of them is in my age. I turned 44 this year, or at least in November of 2019, I turned 44. Nice rounded number, 44. And in my old age and wisdom, I've learned a few things. More often than not, slow and steady wins the race. Your career, your success is partially, but in much lesser part, about getting there first. It's about staying there. It's about sustainability. It's about longevity. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the most talented. I'm not the most hyper uber productive. I'm not the most capable. But out of all of my peers, or at least a lot of people around me, I definitely was the most consistent. I learned very early in my career how quickly I was heading towards a very heavy-duty burnout. But thankfully, I learned from people close to me who I'd witnessed, people who I loved and people who I relied on in my life. I witnessed them burn out. I've seen physically what a physical and emotional burnout does to the human body. The physical damage and the long time it takes for the human body and the human mind to heal and to recuperate from a burnout. It's the equivalent of getting a leg sawed off. And I saw that. So when I started to feel and witness those warning signs, mood swings, sleep problems, health problems, addictive behavior, like back when I would chain smoke, I would drink 16 cups of coffee a day just to keep myself going every day. And then starting to feel like my nervous system was starting to get shot, and I was starting to get really, really clumsy, and I was getting into accidents all the time, and I had dark rings around my eyes, trying to keep up that race. When I saw those warning signs, I knew it was time for me to pull the plug and start to redefine my schedule. It was time for me to start reevaluating how I used my time, and I started to pace myself. I started to insist that there was always time to go to the gym. There was always time to relax. There was always time to play a few games and take it easy. There was always time to just sit down, watch some YouTube videos, and just sit there in my sweatpants and chill out. And you know what happened? It might have taken me a couple more years to reach that same point of success, but by the time I reached it, I reached it in health. I saved my health. And a lot of those people that were, quote, crushing it every day, if they had the same kind of responsibilities, if they were fathers or mothers, if they were full-time employees, if they had other responsibilities, or if they had economic or social stressors or obstacles they were dealing with, they burned out. They burned out and they dropped out of the race. And it's amazing how many incredibly viciously talented artists that I've known in my time that are no longer around. I'm like, shit, whatever happened to her? She was amazing. Well, I found out soon enough that she had burned out. She went on to do something else because she couldn't keep up with the race. She thought she had to sustain that same level of intensity every day, all day, and it didn't last. And by the time she made it to her late 20s, early 30s, she tapped out of the race. I kept going, slowly but surely. The tortoise and the hare. The ones who did manage to sustain that, the ones who are still succeeding at that level of intensity, well, they're not actually living at that same level of intensity that you think, because they're investing every iota of their energy into eating, sleeping, and painting. But that's it. They don't have kids, they don't have other responsibilities, they don't have other jobs, they just have that. So they're investing the same amount of energy, if not even maybe a little bit less, into their day-to-day schedules. But they have that reserve of energy because they're not burning it doing other things. They might feel like they've made a sacrifice for the job, or maybe they just weren't interested. Maybe this is really the only thing that they wanted to do, and I have a lot of respect for people like that. I don't think they're irresponsible. I don't think that they are cop-outs. I think, cool. And I'm happy to see that they found success with it. But if you're somebody who has those kinds of responsibilities in your life, those kinds of obligations that consume that much of your energy, and you're trying to keep up with them, you can, for a very finite amount of time. It's not going to last for very long. If you're really in shape, maybe 10 years. But you're going to tap out. And when you tap out, you're going to lose something very valuable. You're going to lose your passion. What got you into producing artwork in the first place, what got you to wanting to have a career like this in the first place, will get lost. That was one of the warning signs to me that I went from somebody who could not stop creating art. I was addicted to creating art. I was addicted to growth. I was addicted to learning. To being somebody who kept feeling all the time like, oh, fuck, another day of this shit. Fine. All right, go, you know? And I just felt like, honest to God, I just didn't feel the desire or drive to draw anymore. I was growing, I was getting better, but I wasn't enjoying it. And today, since I've given myself permission to pace myself, I enjoy everything I create. Because I'm not burning myself there's no psychological toll I have to pay for being productive. Because it's balanced. Now, with all that said, we can go the opposite extreme, and you can overindulge in me time. And one of the things that definitely did really cut into my productivity was overdoing it with video games. I love games, as you might know, but I overdid it. I'd spend way too much time on that, and that sacrificed a lot of my time. Now, I loved it. I had fun. It was great, and I had a lot of wonderful experiences, but nothing substantial, nothing in real life to show for it. I'm a gamer. There's no question about it. But as much as that's the case, it stunted my growth, period. It stunted my growth because I did it too much. Not because I did it, but because I did it too much. And I find myself being my most productive when the gaming scene is a little dry, when there's not much to play, when there's not much to do. I'm getting tired of playing the same old stuff, and I just meh. So I don't really feel like it. So my passion shifts over to other things that interest me more, and my productivity starts to take off. Things like games, going out to parties too much, going out drinking all the time, and you're constantly in hangover mode, so you don't really have the mental drive and ambition to really produce any work because you're still trying to kind of get out of that headache you've had for 2 days. Not taking care of yourself, just overindulging in anything, ceases to be fun because it becomes too commonplace and comes at the cost of your productivity. So if you're going to play, if you want to have your me time, absolutely have your me time. But like they say, do it in moderation. If you want to be a professional, invest what time you have. Balance your time so that you can invest a good amount of yourself into your work within reason. And then also invest, when you feel you need it, into having fun. Like for me, over the holidays, I worked around the clock. I worked nonstop, but I was having fun. I love learning about camera equipment. I love learning about lenses. I love learning about lighting. I love learning about, set design. I love learning about all these different types of things. They feed me artistically. It's just an extension of my art. So I was having fun with it. But when I realized I was sitting on my phone researching, the difference between the Sigma 35mm 1.4 and the Sony 35mm 1.8 until 3 o'clock in the morning for the second night in a row, I stopped and I said, it's okay. Those lenses will still exist tomorrow. Go to bed. You're starting to sacrifice your sleep for a stupid 35mm lens that you might end up returning anyways. So chill the hell out, Adam. And I did. I stopped. I'd have my son who's completely obsessed with Zelda, and he wanted to play some games with me. So I dropped what I was doing. We sat down together. He cuddled up on my lap, and we played some Zelda together. We had a lot of fun. Remember that you need to do that too. Life is about balance. Life is about not going all in if you don't have that kind of time, and don't feel guilty for not doing it, because while other people might be, their artistic careers might be taking off at hyper speeds and yours might not be taking off at quite such a hyper speed, what they're benefiting, they're putting all of their energy into only allowing one thing to grow, their art. And they're not investing that energy into growing other things that are also hugely valuable, like careers, like their families, like their lovers, like their children. There's a lot of other things that come into that. Maybe they need to invest that time into taking care of their health because of a medical issue, or a physical issue, or an emotional issue. You need to take care of everything. And if you commit to whatever you commit to, you will grow and you will be happy. Art is not the be-all, end-all. All right? So, hopefully this helps a little bit. Hopefully it'll help you to take the edge off that you tend to put on your own shoulders all the time. And of course, I love you all with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.